Okay, Max Igan now joins us on the Bob Tuskin Show. Max, a good friend of the program, and an Aussie, but he still understands the true meaning of independence, more so than many other people out there. He's done many films on what I consider to be true independence. Again, independence from the scarcity-based control of the powers that shouldn't be. Max, welcome to the Bob Tuskin Show. Always great to have you.
Nice to be here, Bob. Thanks for asking me on again.
Well, thank you for coming on, and there's a lot to talk about. But tell me, what does this Independence Day here in the U.S. mean to you?
Well, independence, sovereignty, equity, being who and what you are under God, whatever you perceive God to be. Being true to yourself, following the one law of creation, not answerable to anything else other than the conscience of God. And if you do follow the one law of creation, which is service to the creation, serve yourself, serve others, serve the earth, serve all around you, in order that all around you will serve you back in turn, then you don't do anything wrong, and so you shouldn't be applicable to any man-made laws that infringe upon your right to do those things. To me, that's what independence is, and that's where everybody needs to be and what everybody needs to stand in. I think it's more of an energetic state than anything else.
Do you think people understand natural law?
Well, a lot of people don't, because people are caught up in legal fiction. They believe that what people write on pieces of paper is law. But really, natural law is the conscience of the Creator. That's what it is, whatever you perceive that to be. And it could be the Christian God, it could be a giant robot, it could be a giant grasshopper, it could be anything you want it to be, whatever you believe your Creator is. And if you understand that the Creator created the creation out of service, and that the role of all within creation is to serve the creation, to me that's natural law. To me, you don't hurt people and people don't hurt you. You don't steal. There's no reason to, because humanity should be in a natural state of abundance. It's only the legal fiction that they put in place and the monetary system that prevents us from being in our natural state. And to me, that's what natural law is. It even goes above common law. It goes above even equity. It goes above everything. It's basically the conscience of the Creator, the conscience of God. And I believe we are all simply expressions of frequencies of the mind of the Creator. And that's what, to me, natural law is.
Pavlov did an experiment with chickens. I think I've told this to you before. And he provided the chickens with an abundance of food and water, so whenever they were hungry, they would just go and they would get some. And he observed their behaviors. He then observed their behaviors under conditions of scarcity. And only then did they start to hoard, steal, become more aggressive, and eventually he could get them to the point in which they would kill one another. The pecking order.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what scarcity does. And that's why law itself, man-made law, is such an infringement upon natural law.
Right. Exactly right. And that's how they're able to put forth all this man-made law, is through the chaos. Order out of chaos. They perpetuate the scarcity and have kept us a slave. And when I say they, I don't mean necessarily the Rothschilds or a specific family per se. What I mean is, I want to use the word system, Max, but it's a system / bloodline sort of deal.
Well, it is. It's just an idea, though. It's just a system. I mean, it is the system itself that's at fault, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have to think to yourself, every 100 years or so, the players die, but the game still remains. And as long as we have the levers, people are going to be pulling those levers. As long as we have the game, people are going to play the game.
Well, yeah, and like you said, it's order out of chaos as well, and it's got to be. It isn't just social chaos and economic chaos and military chaos. It's also intellectual chaos, and they've been very, very careful to make us, subject to all of this intellectual chaos. Like people going down different rabbit holes, and just the whole. It's so convoluted, the whole system. It's so difficult to understand because it's so chaotic.
Yeah, and it's almost like it's being used, to manipulate people and distract them, because just like a pile of a vacuum. It sucks up all the junk, but then there's also the occasional diamond in the rough,
Well, there is, but it's the system itself. I mean, that's why it's so difficult to blame people within the system. I mean, sure, there are those who control the money system, and they obviously know what they're doing. It's a totally corrupt money system that is designed to keep people in shortage. But as far as everybody else within the system, even many of the politicians, I don't think they're necessarily evil. They're just working within the system. They're just locked into left brain reality. And they believe that success and all of this sort of stuff is acquisition of social status, acquisition of efficiency as well. They get within the system and they work to make the system more efficient. Then they become a more successful person or whatever business they're doing. If they can get their business or their section of the economy or their role in politics or whatever to run more smoothly and more efficiently and more dynamically and more streamlined, then they're considered to be a successful person. So it's the system itself and people's understanding of the system that continually makes itself more efficient. And the more efficient the system gets at being the system, the more humanity gets discarded along the way. And yet this system is supposed to be there to support the needs of humanity. But it isn't doing that. It's supporting the needs of the system simply by the way it functions. It's almost like it's an energetic life form on its own. But really it's just an idea. It's the concept that this is the way the world should be. And we go to school and we all get taught that this is the way the world should be. And so we grow up and we get into the system and we just work to make it more efficient. And by doing so, we just discard more and more of the human race.
So Independence Day, Max, about breaking free from that system?
Yeah, Independence Day is about being who and what you are. Being independent of the system, being independent of the intellectual chaos, starting to realize that the system is just an idea, that what's important is you, what's important is the earth that you live on and the people around you. And if you all work together to support each other and support the earth that you live on, the whole system just disappears. It's just that people, they just can't do that. So to me, that's what independence is. It's knowing who and what you are and knowing what your potential is and striving to reach that potential. Not operating within the parameters that are provided for you by the system because they're all fiction.
That's exactly right. All right, folks. Max Igan joining us on the Bob Tuskin Show tonight. We'll come back in just a little bit. We'll talk about gardening at some point. I know Max and I both love to talk about gardening. And we may mention a little bit about, well, we'll tell you about it when we come back in just a moment. A lot of our listeners have already been following it, so I'm sure they know that we can't avoid this topic. But we'll talk about it in just a moment. It's the Bob Tuskin Show. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're going to pick it right back up with Max Igan on the Bob Tuskin Show. So, Max, you didn't mean to get in the middle of all of this, but you were just out of the blue calling Chalie to talk about his recent change on 9/11. And Charlie's been somebody on that I've had on the show before. You've talked to him in the past. And we never expected this, to be honest. I know many out there have since looked back at the guy and speculated on all sorts of stuff. I'm not so sure that I like to talk about him personally other than talking about the ideas that he's now come out and denounced. His girlfriend, Silky Carlo, who many people know this, is a reality TV star, not that that makes a difference, has recently published a blog post on her website saying that her Richard Gage event recently, 2 weeks ago, that they had, was a huge success. And she says, quote, "I'd like to clearly assert my position on the events of 9/11. There is much evidence to validate a new, fully independent investigation into the events of 9/11. I fully support an academic debate between opposing scientists. I sincerely hope the truth and justice prevails. She goes on to say that, let's see here. I don't want to read all of this, but check it out. She's weighed in on this now, and a lot of people are wondering what the heck's going on here. Max, you spoke to Charlie about this shortly after he released that video, and you've since done some follow-up interviews and looked into it a bit more. Tell me your thoughts. Where do we stand with this? And before I say that, let me just do a quick disclaimer. I think this is a distraction. At the end of the day, I really rather not spend time talking about individuals, whether they may or may not be shills, although I do not negate the fact that there are people out there, COINTELPRO, if you will, that are trying to, make us, like we were talking about before, be in a state of chaos. Divide us. Divide and conquer is the name of the game. So I am open to the fact that there's people out there who are COINTELPRO, but I'm not quick to talk about that. And, 10 years later now, with this 9/11 anniversary coming up, I think it's time we demand justice now more than ever, because if the further we get away from that day, the further we get away from receiving justice and true justice. And Max, I'll let you take it from there. Why don't you go ahead and give your thoughts on this situation?
Yeah, well, for some reason I seem to have been elected the unofficial Chalie Veitch versus the Truth Movement mediator or something like. It wasn't a position that I actually planned for, and I mean it's I'm not Chalie Veitch, and it's not much point asking me questions about Chalie Veitch. All I know is what you guys heard, what I posted on that talk that I had with him. There was a talk that happened must have been 45 minutes later or an hour later after that first talk, which Adam Davis joined in as well. And that was the same night, by the way, folks. That wasn't sort of the next day. It didn't get posted till the next day, because I sent the file to Adam. He wanted to listen back what he said and decide whether to include the ending or not. But it was actually recorded about 45 minutes or an hour after the first one. Now, look, I haven't seen evidence that would convince me that 9/11 does not warrant a new investigation. I've always said, look, it's an inside job, simply because the evidence, the thermite, there's so much stuff to indicate that it didn't happen the way they told us. And for that to be covered up, even that cover-up itself indicates insider help. So I think it absolutely warrants a new investigation. Charlie has his own opinion. I mean, I speculated. I got rung up by a Sydney breakfast radio show the next day, and of course they asked me about Chalie Veitch as well. I thought they just wanted to talk, but no, it was about Charlie. And I speculated on this. So look, maybe it was a plan from the beginning. Maybe it was a psyop from the beginning. Maybe that's why he was filming all the Love Police. Maybe all of this stuff. You've got to look at it. You've got to speculate. But then there's the other side. Maybe he just changed his mind. Maybe he saw something that we didn't, and it changed his mind. Like I said, personally, I need answers to things such as molten metal, thermite residue, no wing damage on the Pentagon. I'm not buying the wings folded into the plane stuff. I need explanations as to how a plane can vaporize but DNA can be found. I need answers to these things. These things are not being answered, and so a new investigation is warranted. As far as Chalie Veitch goes, I personally don't know how he can deny these things or say these things shouldn't be answered. But then I didn't get to talk to him that well either. I mean, it was late at night. I saw him come online on Skype. I sent him a message and said, "Hey, Charlie, what's going on?" Quick call with a question mark. And he called me. And because I have my Skype set to record by default, because otherwise I forget to push record often when I'm interviewing, as soon as I get an incoming call, it just records it by default. And then at the end of the show, at the end of the talk, it was just a talk. It was just basically two guys talking on Skype. It wasn't even planned to be an interview. Charlie himself said, "Max, I actually wish you'd recorded this." And I said, "Well, actually, I did, because everything records by default. But I wouldn't post it without asking you." And he said, No, please post it, because this explains how I feel. And so I posted it. And it's just been this thing that's gone viral. It's created this huge sensation. I don't hate Chalie Veitch. I like Chalie Veitch, actually. I think he's a nice guy. I've chatted to him maybe 3 times in all. I mean, I had him on the show once. I think I spoke to him once after that, when we just sort of spoke for half an hour or 20 minutes and just chatted about I don't know what. Then I spoke to him again when I spoke to him the other day. So